Good evening. This is the Nation at 5. My name is Toya Singh. Though we usually focus on stories within the country, today we are taking you to the continuing conflict in the Middle East. Remember, 4 days ago on Saturday morning, the Hamas had fired out missiles into South Israel from the Gaza Strip. We've been covering for you the retaliation in the hours since. Remember that Hamas also reportedly took 150 Israelis at least hostage. We're going to continue to bring you developments as the Israeli defense minister has said that they're going to be cutting off energy, food supplies and electricity to the Gaza Strip. 2.5 million people live within that patch. What this effectively means, we'll continue to bring you ground reports of. First though, let's take a look at visuals that are coming in from both the Gaza Strip and different parts of Israel. This first set of footage is coming into us, as we've told you earlier, from Gaza. Now, remember, this is an urban environment that is densely packed, which is why, as you can see here, the gunfire and the rockets are coming down. We are learning from ground reports that civilians are taking shelter within United Nations chartered schools to some degree. These are the visuals that are coming in right now. Remember, Israel has said that they are going to lay complete siege to this Gaza Strip. This visual is also coming in from the same region. Airstrikes flattening high-rise buildings. Remember, the Israel Defense Forces have said that the situation is complicated by the fact that the Hamas will often use civilian targets. Let's go over to my colleague. Pallavi, my colleague Palki, who is with us live right now from Tel Aviv. It's about 2:30 p.m. in Tel Aviv right now. Palki, as we spoke to you earlier in the day today, you told us that much of the fighting had actually moved down south. Can you tell our audiences right now about the current situation in the Gaza Strip? What are we learning about the civilian populations there, for example?
Well, the Gaza Strip is coming under attack, and constantly so, and the Israel government has formed or has authorized the formation of an emergency coalition, which will include opposition parties as well, to firm up Israel's response to what's happening. In the meantime, I can also tell you that we've seen some rocket firing here as well in southern Israel. In parts of southern Israel there was a red alert, and we've been going to various border villages, and we've had to stop at various places to take shelter, because there have been sounds of bombs going off and rocket fire coming in. Currently I'm in a place called Ashkelon, which is a few kilometers from the Gaza border, and you see scenes like these every few meters. When you go to these places, you see cars that have been completely damaged and they came under rocket fire. You see bullet marks everywhere. We went to Sterod earlier today, and we also saw the police station that was the site of a 20-hour-long gun battle. So the situation is still very much tense on both sides of the border, including in Gaza. Of course, the United Nations has been making statements, but Israel, while most of the border villages are now completely in control of the Israeli forces, there are a lot of places which are beyond limits for people and the press as they try to sanitize these regions.
Tell our audiences, please, Palki, we know that over the weekend the Israeli Prime Minister essentially told people, civilians in the Gaza Strip, to flee. However, multiple media reports have said that civilians don't have anywhere to flee to. Can you bring us the context there, please?
Gaza is a very thickly populated strip, as you know, and it is difficult, I'm sure, when the Israeli government announces a complete siege of Gaza. It would be hard for civilians to find shelter. The IDF has also issued a statement saying that we are not asking them to go to Egypt. What the government in Israel is basically telling people in Gaza is that these are the designated targets, these are the Hamas targets that we will be attacking, and you have to move out of these specific zones. I think that is the message. But having said that, like I said, it's a very, very congested area, and in the past Hamas has been accused of using human beings, using civilians as human shields, and having their military assets in schools and hospitals. So it becomes very hard to avoid civilian casualties, and we are seeing a lot of them.
Can you tell us also, Palki, about the dialogue around hostages? We know that according to security assessments, the Hamas has taken around 150 Israeli people, perhaps more, into hostage. Can you tell us more about how that dialogue is taking place? We know that over the weekend we were receiving inputs that Qatar is facilitating those discussions. Please tell us more.
Well, there are many players that are trying to act as peace brokers or mediators. Egypt is one of them, definitely. They're talking to Hezbollah, they're talking to Hamas, and they're also talking to the Israeli government. The second is Erdogan, the Turkish president, who has offered to mediate repeatedly. And Qatar, of course, given the fact that the top Hamas leadership resides in Gaza and gets a lot of political and monetary backing from the regime in Doha. So yes, they're all trying to do this. We've had multiple statements coming from the Hamas leadership. One side saying that we are prepared for the long haul and we will continue to fight, and we have taken hostages and we are going to use hostages as bargaining chips to get Palestinians held up in Israeli jails out, and also Palestinians held overseas. So that is one side. The other side saying that we are ready to discuss some sort of a deal with Israel. At this point, a deal looks very unlikely on the Israeli side, given the scale of this attack that we've seen, and there's a lot of pressure on the government and the agencies, given the colossal intelligence failure that we also saw that resulted in this attack and the casualties that followed. More than 900 Israelis have died, more than 2,400 are injured. So Israel's response is going to be tough, and we are only going to see an escalation in the days ahead as the government of Israel prepares for a ground offensive now. So far they've been focusing on aerial attacks, but we are looking at a very strong possibility of a ground offensive. So a deal at this point looks very difficult to achieve.
Can you take us, Palki, to that exact point? You said right now that a ground invasion is possibly imminent. Many experts say that the urban, dense, packed environment of the Gaza Strip might make this challenging, even though the IDF does have a technology advantage, a size advantage, when it just comes to the size of their forces. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the next few days could possibly look like? Who stands in advantage here?
Well, in a war, how do you define advantage? Wars are not just fought to gain territory. Wars also are supposed to achieve political ends and political objectives. And I would say at this point, there is no advantage on any side because people have been killed on both sides of the border. 1,600 killed and counting, thousands injured. But having said that, like you mentioned, the technological advantage is, of course, on the Israeli side. They're also getting support from the US and other allies. They're also getting military equipment, critical military equipment coming from the US, and they've also deployed their big aircraft carriers like the USS Gerald Ford. So yes, to that extent, the Israelis have an advantage. But if you look at their statement, I want to quote from what the Israeli military has just said. And this is a statement that came today. And I'm quoting, they said the Hamas operatives had nowhere to hide in Gaza, and the Air Force in Israel is carrying out intensive airstrikes in waves every 4 hours. So this is going to continue, and Israel is looking at dismantling the leadership and the Hamas infrastructure in the Gaza Strip.
Okay, Palki, if I could just ask you to stay with us. We're going to bring our audiences more visuals from the ground, and we'll come back to you for more questions. On the screen behind me, we are continuing to bring you visuals from the scene. These are visuals of explosions that are taking place. The sky is lighting up in Gaza. Saturday night, Sunday night, Monday night, all three have looked exactly like this for the residents in the Gaza Strip. Gaza City falls within that. We're going to move from this visual back to my colleague Palki, who is with us live. Palki, we've just brought our audiences more footage from the Gaza Strip itself. We were telling our audiences earlier that this is a particularly densely populated strip. Some statistics say that the population is more than half very young people. Lots and lots of children live in this region. Can you tell our audiences, how is the IDF defining the end game? They've said that the Gaza Strip is something they're going to lay siege to, but what does this effectively mean?
I think it effectively means, and I'm saying it from my understanding of the situation, it effectively means dismantling the Hamas infrastructure and the kind of support, political support that Hamas is getting from some quarters is also raising tensions, is also making the situation more complicated. When